In the merciless arena of American politics, where careers rise and fall with the flick of a news cycle, Karoline Leavitt stared down the media Goliath and didn't blink. At just 27 years old, the youngest White House spokesperson in history orchestrated what many deemed impossible, bringing The View, a daytime talk show fortress, to its knees through an $800 million defamation lawsuit that would reshape media accountability forever. The delicious irony wasn't lost on anyone. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin, hosts who built careers launching venomous verbal assaults at political opponents, now found themselves ensnared by their own arrogance. Their calculated attack on Levitt transformed from a ratings grab into a legal catastrophe that would decimate their empire. Before we dive deeper into this remarkable confrontation, take a moment to subscribe to our channel for more unfiltered analyses of American political warfare. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We're curious to see how far this media earthquake has resonated. The Manhattan courtroom fell silent as Karoline Leavitt entered with glacial composure. Her navy suit cut sharp angles against the sterile backdrop, each measured step a declaration of war against the media machine that had attempted to dismantle her. The defendant's table presented a stark contrast. Whoopi Goldberg, normally draped in smug confidence, now hid mounting anxiety behind dark glasses, her fingers betraying nervousness as they gripped the table's edge. Joy Behar, the self-proclaimed queen of caustic commentary, sat with knuckles whitened around her armrest, while Sunny Hostin, the group's sole attorney, frantically leafed through documents with trembling hands, her legal expertise suddenly insufficient against the storm approaching. Levitt's attorney rose like a thunderhead. "The View deliberately smeared Karoline Leavitt's reputation," he announced, voice slicing through the tense air. "They orchestrated a televised ambush, and today, they'll pay $800 million for it." The courtroom erupted. Reporters' pens scratched furiously across notepads, capturing a number that made even the judge raise an eyebrow. This wasn't merely Levitt's personal vendetta. It was a calculated strike against media arrogance, a system that had long operated with impunity, destroying reputations while hiding behind the shield of entertainment. As Leavitt took the stand, the weight of this broader mission settled across her shoulders. If you've ever questioned the ethics behind how media portrays political figures, hit that like button now and share your perspective in the comments. Media accountability affects us all, regardless of political affiliation. Leavitt's testimony began with surgical precision. "I'm not here just for personal honor," she stated, voice steady as a slow-moving river that conceals its true power. "I'm here because what The View did wasn't aimed solely at me, but at anyone who dares stand for their beliefs. They weaponized a television platform, and I couldn't allow that to continue unchallenged." She briefly glanced at the defendant's table. Whoopi crossed her arms defensively, lips tightly pursed in a failed attempt at defiance. Joy, typically sharp-tongued, now bowed her head, silver hair falling forward to shield her expression. Sunny clutched crumpled documents, staring at them as though some legal escape route might materialize from the pages. "I grew up in New Hampshire," Leavitt continued, her voice warming slightly but never surrendering to sentimentality. "In a small town where honesty and hard work weren't just platitudes but daily practice. Everything I've achieved, from college graduation to my White House position, came through persistent effort and unwavering commitment to truth." Jurors nodded, her story resonating with their own values of meritocracy and fair play. Her attorney stepped closer. "You've achieved remarkable success at a young age. Why choose to appear on The View, a show notorious for combative discourse?" A calculated smile crossed Leavitt's face, not smug, but revealing the strategic mind behind her young exterior. "I knew The View wasn't a level playing field," she replied, "but I wanted them to expose themselves. I studied dozens of episodes, analyzed how they treated guests with differing perspectives. I prepared methodically for whatever tactics they might deploy. This wasn't naivete but strategic foresight, stepping into their studio not as victim but as witness, turning their trap into testimony. I anticipated their attempts to undermine me," she added, voice lowering with resolve that electrified the room. "But I also knew that if I maintained my composure they would reveal their own bias and malice to the world." A middle-aged female juror scribbled notes feverishly, clear empathy in her expression. Harper nodded toward the judge. "Miss Leavitt isn't merely a victim. She transformed an attack into a fight for justice. What motivated your decision to sue rather than ignore their comments?" he asked. Leavitt straightened, eyes flashing with controlled intensity. "Because silence enables destruction. If we remain passive, shows like The View will continue demolishing reputations without consequence. I filed this lawsuit to send a clear message. Words wield power, but justice wields more. Her response jolted through the courtroom like an electrical current. Spectators whispered among themselves. Jurors exchanged meaningful glances. At the defendant's table, Sunny Hostin shook her head in disbelief as reality settled in. Joy Behar's brow furrowed deeply, her white-knuckled grip tightening further. Whoopi finally removed her glasses, revealing eyes heavy, with the realization that this battle had slipped beyond their control. Are you following this case closely? Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to ensure you don't miss any developments in this landmark media accountability lawsuit. The courtroom lights dimmed as a large screen illuminated, casting all present in its blue glow. A suffocating silence descended, broken only by occasional paper rustling and hushed breathing. Attorney David Harper stepped center, eyes sharp as surgical instruments. "Ladies and gentlemen," he intoned, voice resonant with grave purpose. "What you're about to witness isn't conversation, but calculated character assassination." The footage began. The View studio appeared. Bright lights, applauding audience, the facade of casual discussion. Karoline Leavitt entered in a tailored blue suit, her polite smile contrasting with cautious eyes that suggested she knew what awaited her. The three hosts, Goldberg, Behar, and Hostin, initially maintained friendly appearances, but within moments, their demeanor shifted like predators detecting vulnerability. Joy Behar leaned forward, eyes glittering with undisguised contempt beneath her performative smile. "So Karoline," she began, voice dripping false sweetness, "do you really believe you're qualified to serve as press secretary, or were you selected because Trump needed an attractive television presence?" The studio audience's laughter pierced like stilettos. Levitt remained composed, shoulders square. "I was chosen for my experience and competence," she replied, beginning to outline her professional journey from White House aide to campaign spokesperson. Before she could finish, Sunny Hostin interrupted coldly. "Come now, Miss Leavitt, let's be realistic. Your role is merely polishing Trump's image, correct? Someone of your youth and inexperience, how could you possibly navigate genuine political complexity?" More audience laughter followed, clearly encouraged by the host's leading glances. Leavitt maintained composure, though her clasped hands betrayed controlled tension. As she attempted to respond with policy examples, Whoopi Goldberg raised her hand dismissively. "Listen, honey," Whoopi said, voice dropping ominously, "you can present whatever narrative you choose, but we recognize reality. You're simply a pawn in Trump's strategic game, nothing more." Thunderous applause drowned Leavitt's response attempt. The footage halted, plunging the courtroom back into silence, save for Sunny Hostin's sharp exhale from the defendant's table. Harper turned toward the jury, speaking deliberately. This wasn't fair discussion. This was staged public humiliation, designed to demolish Miss Leavitt's reputation before millions of viewers. He approached Leavitt, still at the witness stand. How did it feel sitting in that chair, targeted by individuals wielding such cultural influence? Leavitt met the jury's gaze directly, eyes unwavering. "I felt insulted, but not blindsided," she stated with quiet certainty. "I'd prepared for hostility, but their malice exceeded even my expectations. They weren't seeking dialogue, they wanted public spectacle at my expense." A male juror furrowed his brow, writing rapidly. A female juror shook her head, disapproval evident as her eyes darted toward the defendants. Harper turned toward the defendant's table where the hosts sat immobilized. Whoopi crossed her arms defensively, but her tightly pressed lips betrayed mounting anxiety. Joy bowed her head, silver hair creating a shield as if hiding from judicial scrutiny. Sunny clutched her documents, whispering urgently to counsel, her complexion ashen. "These women," Harper declared, pointing directly at them, "weaponized their platform to smear a promising young professional. We will demonstrate they executed this with full awareness and deliberate intent," jurors murmured amongst themselves, clearly affected by the footage. A reporter typed feverishly, sensing the narrative shifting irrevocably. ABC's attorney James Whitaker stood, attempting damage control. "We maintain this represents standard talk show discourse," he claimed, voice subtly faltering as his eyes flickered toward the damning video evidence still displayed. Harper's smile was minimal, but devastating. "We have substantial additional evidence, Your Honor," he announced confidently. evidence confirming this wasn't talk show spontaneity but calculated character assassination targeting Miss Leavitt. The courtroom fell silent, all attention fixated on him, awaiting the next revelation. Leavitt, still at the witness stand, exchanged a brief knowing glance with Harper, the silent communication of strategists, recognizing their advantage. What's your opinion on how talk shows should balance entertainment with ethical treatment of guests? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Sarah Clean, former producer of The View, approached the witness stand with palpable reluctance. The courtroom's tension thickened as every gaze followed her progress. Jurors sat motionless, pens suspended above notepads, awaiting revelations that might shatter the foundation of a television institution. Attorney Harper approached with measured steps. Please describe your role at The View and your observations regarding Miss Karoline Leavitt's appearance. Sarah surveyed the defendant's table, where the host sat frozen in mounting dread. Whoopi, normally the embodiment of television confidence, now hugged herself protectively, eyes concealed behind dark glasses that couldn't hide her evident stress. Joy whispered frantically to counsel, her normally composed features contorted with apprehension. Sunny clung to her disintegrating documents, staring at Sarah as though willing her into silence. I worked at The View for over 3 years, Sarah began, voice clear despite subtle trembling. I managed episode planning, including Miss Leavitt's appearance. Harper presented a stack of documents. Could you detail the preparation process for that particular episode? Sarah's posture straightened, her testimony gathering momentum. We held a planning meeting several days before. Senior producers and hosts discussed their approach to Leavitt's segment. Her gaze hardened slightly. They weren't interested in substantive conversation. They wanted viral content, something explosive for social media circulation. The directive was unambiguous: make Leavitt a target, publicly undermine her competence. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. An older female juror frowned deeply, taking rapid notes. Harper displayed an internal email on screen, magnifying a passage that sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Leavitt is primary target. Joy initiates appearance critique. Sunny challenges competence. Whoopi delivers final blow. Sarah nodded gravely. That's an email from the lead producer. I was present when it was drafted and distributed. The murmuring intensified. A reporter typed frantically, eyes gleaming with the recognition of career-defining material. Harper pressed forward. Do you possess additional evidence, Miss Clean? Sarah retrieved a USB drive from her bag. I preserved recordings from that planning meeting, she confirmed, voice steadier now, fortified by purpose. Harper connected the device, and a producer's voice filled the courtroom. We need dramatic confrontation. Leavitt's young, potentially vulnerable. Push until she loses composure. Laughter in the recording sent visible revulsion through several jurors. A middle-aged male juror shook his head, indignation flashing across his features. Sarah continued, gaze shifting briefly to Leavitt, who maintained her characteristic composure. I opposed this approach. I argued it violated basic fairness principles, but my concerns were dismissed. After the episode aired, I couldn't continue participating in such practices. I contacted Miss Leavitt and provided everything, emails, recordings, production notes, because someone needed to expose the truth. Leavitt acknowledged Sarah with a subtle nod, a gesture of quiet gratitude that spoke volumes. Harper addressed the jury directly. This wasn't spontaneous television. This was methodical reputation destruction. He gestured toward the defendants. And they orchestrated every moment with full awareness. The defendants' reactions told their own damning story. Whoopi finally removed her protective glasses, revealing exhausted eyes that acknowledged the battle's turning tide. Joy clenched her fists in futile resistance, while Sunny whispered urgently to ABC's attorney with visible desperation. Whitaker attempted recovery. Miss Clean, you departed The View due to personal dissatisfaction. Your testimony could be motivated by vengeance rather than truth. Sarah met his gaze unflinchingly. I left because I couldn't ethically continue supporting an operation that weaponized entertainment against individuals. My evidence has undergone verification. I have no incentive to misrepresent facts. Whitaker's expression tightened, unable to identify exploitable weaknesses in her testimony. Harper addressed the judge with quiet confidence. We'll present additional witnesses, but this evidence speaks with unmistakable clarity. The View didn't merely criticize Miss Leavitt, they engineered her public humiliation. The judge nodded gravely, signaling the proceedings to continue. From the plaintiff's seat, Levitt observed the unfolding scenario with remarkable equanimity. Her eyes met Sarah's again, communicating a shared understanding. Justice was approaching with unstoppable momentum. If you believe media platforms should be held accountable for their treatment of guests, hit the like button now. Your engagement helps spread this important message about media ethics. Sunlight streamed through high windows, casting dramatic shadows across James Whittaker as ABC's attorney rose with artificial confidence. His gray suit projected professional polish, but his darting eyes betrayed mounting concern after Sarah Klein's devastating testimony. Whittaker faced the judge, voice projecting forced assurance. "Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate that the View's approach represents standard talk show format, not malicious targeting." He called his first witness, Linda Carter, a studio audience member who approached the stand with visible discomfort, her blonde curls bobbing with each nervous step. "Miss Carter," Whittaker began gently, "did you perceive the hosts as deliberately attacking Miss Leavitt?" Linda shook her head hesitantly. "No. I thought they were being entertaining. That's the View's style. Provocative commentary to engage viewers." Whittaker smiled triumphantly. But Harper rose with predatory focus. "Miss Carter, did production staff provide instructions before filming commenced?" Linda shifted uncomfortably. "They just told us when to applaud or laugh when signaled." Harper produced a document with devastating precision. "This is a production directive, instructing the audience to react intensely during planned attacks on Miss Leavitt." The jury stirred, a young female member writing rapidly, indignation flashing across her features. Harper wasn't finished. He played a backstage recording captured after filming concluded. Joy Behar's voice echoed coldly. "She thought she was clever, but we made her look completely incompetent." Producers' laughter in the recording visibly disturbed an older female juror, who covered her mouth in evident shock. Whittaker attempted recovery. "That's merely backstage conversation. Every talk show has similar moments." Harper countered immediately. "If merely casual conversation, why did internal communications explicitly designate Miss Leavitt as a, quote, target for takedown? Why were hosts given specific instructions to undermine her professional credibility?" He addressed the jury with quiet intensity. "This wasn't entertainment. This was calculated reputation destruction targeting a young professional." The defendants appeared physically diminished. Whoopi stared fixedly downward, arms tightly crossed. Joy clenched her fists, face flushed with anger but unable to maintain eye contact. Sunny whispered desperately to Whittaker, her expression betraying recognition of their deteriorating position. Harper called Levitt to counter ABC's defense. She approached with measured dignity, her gaze sweeping across jurors with unassuming confidence. "Miss Leavitt," Harper began, "ABC contends you're a public figure who must accept criticism. Your response?" Levitt offered a restrained smile, not smugness but resolute certainty. "I accept substantive criticism of my professional performance. The View didn't critique. They fabricated, defamed, and deliberately damaged my reputation before millions of viewers." Jurors nodded, some writing rapidly. A middle-aged male juror glanced toward the hosts with evident skepticism. Levitt continued, voice lowering with controlled emotion. "I'm pursuing legal action not from weakness but principle. If nobody challenges this behavior, programs like The View will continue destroying reputations without consequence." Her words penetrated the jury's consciousness like precision arrows. Whittaker attempted interruption, voice rising desperately. "Miss Leavitt cannot prove malicious intent." Harper calmly presented another internal document, a View meeting memo stating, "Ensure Leavitt cannot respond effectively. She must appear incompetent." The courtroom erupted in whispers as jurors exchanged shocked glances. Whittaker sank into his chair, face ashen, with the recognition of impending defeat. Harper stood at the center of the courtroom, voice resonating with authority. "We call defendants Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin to testify." A collective gasp rippled through spectators as the hosts approached the stand. Levitt observed from the plaintiff's table with remarkable composure, her unwavering gaze dissecting the defendant's every movement. As a media consumer, do you feel talk shows have ethical responsibilities toward their guests? Comment below with your perspective on this important issue. Whoopi led the reluctant procession to the witness stand, struggling to maintain her characteristic confidence but betrayed by rigid posture and defensive body language. Joy followed, silver-haired disheveled, glaring defiantly at Harper but with faltering conviction. Sunny approached last, clutching her legal documents like talismans, her typically assured presence diminished by the weight of impending testimony. Harper began with Whoopi, voice deceptively gentle. "Miss Goldberg, please explain why you characterized Miss Leavitt as Trump's pawn." Quote, 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 quote. Whoopi attempted her familiar authoritative tone. "I express my opinion. That's what talk show hosts do. We speak candidly. It's our professional responsibility." Harper displayed an internal email that silenced the courtroom. Whoopi concludes, with strong statement making Levitt unable to respond effectively. Harper's gaze intensified. Is this candid opinion or strategic character assassination? Whoopi's composure fractured. "I don't recall that specific communication," she mumbled, her typically commanding voice reduced to uncertain murmuring. An older male juror frowned deeply, pen hovering over his notepad. Harper pivoted to Joy Behar, who attempted defiant posturing despite visibly trembling hands. "Miss Behar, did you conduct research on Miss Leavitt before her appearance?" Joy shrugged with forced nonchalance. "I'm familiar enough with public figures without needing resumes." Harper produced another production note. Joy opens with appearance emphasis. Establish Leavitt as merely decorative rather than substantive. "You claim no research," Harper observed coldly, yet knew precisely which personal attacks would most effectively undermine her professional credibility. Joy's attempted response dissolved into silence. She lowered her head, silver hair concealing her flushed features, as a young female juror shook her head in evident disapproval. Finally, Harper addressed Sunny Hostin, who attempted to maintain professional composure, but whose darting eyes betrayed mounting panic. "Ms. Hostin, as an attorney you understand defamation consequences. Why participate in this coordinated attack?" Sunny attempted recovery. "I merely questioned her professional qualifications. That constitutes protected speech." Harper displayed Sunny's message to a producer. "Ensure Leavitt has minimal response opportunity. I'll focus on competence questioning." Harper's voice turned glacial. "Is this protected speech or calculated reputation destruction?" Sunny stammered ineffectually, her legal expertise crumbling under evidence's weight. Harper addressed the jury with quiet authority. These defendants didn't engage in spontaneous commentary. They executed a meticulously planned character assassination. At the defendants' table, the host's body language told the story of their collapsing defense. Whoopi covered her face, shoulders slumping in defeat. Joy clenched her fists uselessly, eyes vacant with the recognition of inevitable judgment. Sunny's carefully assembled documents scattered across the table, a visual metaphor for their disintegrating legal position. From the plaintiff's seat, Levitt observed with unwavering focus. This wasn't about personal vindication but systemic accountability, challenging an industry that had operated too long without meaningful consequences. A reporter's hurried text flashed momentarily. "The View self-destructs under evidence pressure," Harper concluded with commanding presence. "We've demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that The View not only violated ethical standards, but deliberately engaged in legally actionable defamation." The judge signaled for the proceedings to continue, his expression reflecting the gravity of unfolding events. The courtroom fell silent as the jury foreperson rose, holding a single sheet of paper that would determine The View's fate. Karoline Leavitt sat at the plaintiff's table, hands lightly clasped, eyes reflecting not anxiety but the calm certainty of someone who had transformed victimhood into purposeful action. Across the room, the defendants presented a portrait of impending collapse. Whoopi Goldberg, stripped of her protective glasses, bowed her head, hands trembling slightly. Joy Behar, disheveled and diminished, stared fixedly at the floor as if reality had become unbearable. Sunny Hostin clutched her scattered documents, eyes reflecting desperate calculation, even as her legal training confirmed the inevitable outcome. James Whitaker, ABC's lead counsel, sat motionless beside them, complexion ashen, resembling a gambler who had wagered his professional reputation on a losing hand. The jury foreperson, a middle-aged woman with resolute bearing, cleared her throat. Her voice cut through the silence with unwavering clarity. "In the defamation lawsuit between Karoline Leavitt and the U with ABC Media Company, we find the defendants guilty." A collective gasp swept through spectators like a sudden gust. The foreperson continued steadily. We order payment to Miss Levitt totaling $800 million, encompassing compensatory and punitive damages. The courtroom erupted, exclamations, camera flashes, and stunned whispers creating a sensory tsunami. A reporter typed frantically, the words "View Empire collapses," illuminating his screen. Levitt allowed herself a subtle smile, not triumphant celebration, but quiet acknowledgement that justice had prevailed. She exchanged a meaningful glance with attorney Harper, whose nod conveyed shared recognition of their historic achievement. At the defendants' table, the hosts physically manifested their devastating defeat. Whoopi covered her face, shoulders trembling visibly. Joy, for the first time, raised her gaze, eyes hollow with the recognition of career-ending consequences. Sunny, the lawyer whose expertise had proven insufficient, gripped her head in disbelief as her documents scattered to the floor with finality. The judge restored order with his gavel, then nodded toward Levitt, inviting her statement. Levitt rose with elegant authority, her voice resonating with clarity and purpose. "I didn't initiate this lawsuit for financial gain. I sought to establish that no individual or institution, regardless of cultural influence, can destroy reputations without accountability. Today's verdict sends an unequivocal message. Truth ultimately prevails over power." Her words generated quiet approval from jurors and subdued applause from spectators before the judge's gavel restored decorum. Harper added with resonant certainty, "This judgment represents not merely Miss Levitt's personal vindication, but a watershed moment for all those maligned by media overreach." He turned toward the defendants, his expression unyielding. "The View weaponized its platform, and now faces appropriate consequences." Whitaker attempted protest, but his voice faltered, overwhelmed by audience reaction and the judge's stern countenance. Levitt departed the courtroom to face waiting media, cameras flashing like lightning around her. She offered only one statement, her voice calm yet powerful. "Justice prevailed today. The View lost, but ethical standards won." Her words spread across broadcasting networks and social media platforms with viral intensity. Inside, the hosts departed like fading shadows of their former selves. Whoopi left wordlessly, gaze distant and defeated. Joy whispered something inaudible to her attorney, her typically assertive voice diminished beyond recognition. Sunny, once confident in her legal expertise, sat motionless, her expression vacant with disbelief. ABC confronted catastrophic consequences as advertisers withdrew support and viewership collapsed. This verdict wasn't merely a lawsuit's conclusion, but a paradigm shift. A warning that media entities cannot operate above accountability. Levitt, through strategic resolve and principled determination, had transformed The View from cultural juggernaut to cautionary tale. Do you think this verdict will change how media outlets treat their guests? Share your predictions in the comments section below. In the aftermath of the historic $800 million verdict, the once impregnable View empire disintegrated with stunning rapidity. The courtroom that witnessed its collapse now stood empty, sunlight streaming through high windows illuminating vacant seats. The stage where one of history's most consequential media accountability battles had unfolded. Outside, ABC's headquarters underwent physical transformation as workers removed The View's prominent signage, leaving a conspicuous void, visual testimony to the show's dissolution after decades of cultural dominance. Karoline Leavitt, the determined young woman who brought a media colossus to its knees, had departed the immediate spotlight, but her victory reverberated globally with tsunami force. Levitt topples View empire, dominated social media feeds, accumulating millions of shares and igniting fierce debates about media responsibility. ABC descended into internal chaos, emergency executive meetings stretching into dawn hours as panic spread through corporate ranks. A leaked internal memo revealed their dawning recognition. "We catastrophically underestimated Levitt. This represents our network's most significant existential crisis." Advertisers abandoned ship with devastating swiftness. Cosmetics brands, technology companies, and automobile manufacturers withdrew contracts, accelerating ABC's financial hemorrhaging. With losses mounting exponentially, network executives issued a terse statement announcing The View's cancellation, concluding nearly 30 years of broadcasting. The once bustling studio fell silent, its brilliant lights extinguished, a mausoleum to hubris and UN accountability. The hosts' individual trajectories reflected their professional implosion. Whoopi Goldberg, once television's embodiment of confident authority, retreated from public visibility, announcing retirement through a brief social media statement offering no explanation beyond, "It's time to conclude this chapter." Devoted viewers expressed mourning, but those following the lawsuit recognized her untenable position. Joy Behar, whose caustic commentary had defined her career, attempted to pivot toward memoir writing, but the project quickly disappeared from publisher announcements as the lawsuit's shockwaves continued reverberating through media circles. Sunny Hostin, previously proud of her legal credentials, faced profound professional crisis, withdrawing from television commitments for personal recalibration, as she stated in her sole post-verdict interview. As The View disintegrated, Leavitt emerged as a cultural beacon. Universities requested her presence as keynote speaker, organizations presented awards recognizing her courage in challenging institutional power, and her principled stand inspired countless individuals. Addressing a packed media ethics conference, Leavitt stood before thousands, her voice resonating with quiet authority. "My motivation wasn't notoriety or financial compensation. I fought to establish that truth must prevail over power, that accountability applies to everyone." Thunderous applause erupted as social media posts, hailing her as a transformative figure, proliferated exponentially. The Leavitt effect, as journalism schools quickly termed it, catalyzed industry-wide transformation. Talk shows that previously operated without accountability suddenly implemented rigorous ethical reviews. Production companies instituted mandatory media ethics training. Legal advisors now reviewed scripts before broadcasting. Several state legislatures even introduced enhanced legal protections against media defamation. Leavitt became an unexpected cultural icon, particularly among younger generations seeking authentic leadership. Social media influencers created viral analysis videos examining her strategic approach, with titles like "How Karoline Leavitt Dismantled a Media Empire," accumulating tens of millions of views. Grassroots supporters even produced merchandise featuring $800 million equals accountability slogans, transforming Leavitt's victory into a cultural movement transcending political divides. Leavitt herself maintained characteristic balance, continuing her White House responsibilities without allowing celebrity status to distract from her core mission. Colleagues described her as fundamentally unchanged, still humble, still intellectually rigorous, but now carrying an expanded sense of purpose. The following day, addressing the White House press corps, Leavitt stood before a forest of microphones and cameras. The lights illuminated her steadfast composure as she articulated the verdict's broader significance. "We've established that media institutions, regardless of cultural influence, remain answerable to truth. Continue demanding accountability, and together we'll create a more responsible information ecosystem." Her statement resonated beyond that room, spreading across digital platforms where millions shared it as a rallying cry for media reform. From an empty courtroom to international influence, Leavitt's journey represented far more than personal vindication. The View's remnants symbolized the consequences of unchecked power, while Leavitt's principled stand illuminated a path toward greater media accountability, a legacy that would inform public discourse for generations. Karoline Leavitt's landmark victory against The View reveals profound truths about contemporary American society, particularly regarding media power, personal accountability, and justice in our politically polarized landscape. This historic case demonstrates how a determined 27-year-old woman confronted a formidable media institution that had attempted to weaponize its platform against her. When attacked maliciously by hosts Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin, Leavitt refused victimhood, instead methodically gathering evidence, internal emails, backstage recordings, and insider testimony to expose The View's calculated character assassination campaign. Her $800 million judgment represented more than monetary compensation. It established that no entity, regardless of cultural influence, stands above accountability. The View's subsequent implosion, from canceled programming to the host's professional retreats, illustrates the concrete consequences of abusing media power. This story holds particular relevance in today's American context, where social and traditional media can amplify personal attacks with devastating consequences for individuals' reputations and psychological well-being. For viewers navigating this complex media landscape, Leavitt's approach offers a blueprint. When facing unjustified public criticism, respond not with impulsive emotion but strategic determination. Gather evidence, seek qualified assistance, and utilize appropriate channels to establish accountability. More fundamentally, this case reminds us that perseverance and principled action can overcome seemingly insurmountable opposition. By maintaining unwavering commitment to truth, Levitt not only secured personal vindication but catalyzed systemic media reform that will benefit countless others. Thank you for following Karoline Leavitt's remarkable journey against the view. If you value substantive analysis of media accountability and political confrontation, please subscribe and activate notifications to receive our future coverage examining power dynamics in American society. Remember, in a world of increasing media manipulation, critical thinking remains our most powerful defense against misinformation. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and join our community of engaged citizens committed to media transparency.